Hello and welcome to what is the final session of Battery Innovation Days. Great to see you here. We will be hearing in a little moment from Jean-Éric Paquet, who is the Director General, of course, of DG Research and Innovation. But first, we have a session where we're talking about something that is absolutely key: innovation uptake. We all know that navigating that rocky road from lab to startup is really tough. So we want to really look at what support innovators need. And we are going to hear some success stories, which is also really important. Because, of course, it's not just the technology that matters. We need tools to bring that technology to market. So we want to find out a little bit more about what is actually happening at European level, what sort of support is happening at European level to help companies or innovators to cross that famous valley of death to commercialization. So lab to market. So to start us off, we're delighted to have with us Tore Sekenes, who is the European Battery Alliance Director at InnoEnergy. And InnoEnergy is partially funded by the EIT, the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. So it's all about speeding up sustainable energy innovation. So Tore, I think you're a bit like a dating agency, a matching agency. You're the Tinder of this world. I mean, bringing together innovators and industry entrepreneurs and investors. But I mean, it's more than that, isn't it? You are a real catalyst. So tell us some more about it. And I think also you're going to tell us some success stories, which we definitely want to hear.
With pleasure. I'm then Tore Sekenes, as Kathy introduced me. I work at InnoEnergy, and I lead the battery part of that, which is the EBA250. I'll explain what that is in just a moment. Could I have the agenda, please? So I'll first give a little bit of background on InnoEnergy and EBA250. Some success factors, and tell you a little bit about the European battery value chain status, what are we lacking, and so on, and then come to the topic of the speech, the success stories, and some conclusions at the very end. Next slide, please. So what do? I lead this European Battery Alliance 250. The EBA250, as we usually call it, is an inclusive alliance with more than 700 members now. And all of the members, we have the common goal that we are going to build a European battery industry. So anyone with the honest and sustainable good intention to contribute to that industry is welcome into this alliance. On the screen, you see a circle, as in circular. And you also, if you look at the smaller text, you will see that it spans across the whole value chain. This is a very important thing to take with you. No one is isolated in this world. You have to have upstream and downstream, and that's in fact one of the factors that is a success factor for companies, that you are well connected in the flow, so to say. Next slide, please. To put the European Battery Alliance 250 in a bigger context, most of you probably know this, but the European Battery Alliance, and that is bigger than my little box, consists really of simplifying things in three parts. At the top of this slide, you will see the governmental side, which both from centrally, from the EU part and from the member states. These are the guys that implement regulation, that do the governmental part of things. Then you have my box, which I just explained, and then you have a very big box, which is the whole research and innovation part. And this is probably the biggest part, and it is this box that is organizing this event, of course. In there you have a number of different organizations. I will not go into all the different parts because I will for sure forget some and step on some toes and so on. It's a very important part dealing with research and innovation. My box deals with industrialization of all the good things that comes from this big group. So next slide, please. The European Battery Alliance, the part that I work with, what we would like to contribute with, and I hope that we're doing that successfully, is basically these four things: regulatory insights, that we convey whatever is coming from the EU part, from the governmental part of the European Battery Alliance, and convey that to our members. Likewise, taking views and opinions from the members back to the authorities where applicable. We're in a privileged situation. We talk with a lot of members, companies, organizations, and so on. So we're able to put together market intelligence. Also, this we serve to our members and anyone who is interested. Actually, it's a very inclusive organization. Wherever possible, we act as business development catalysts. So whenever companies in our alliance and others as well contact us for help, for understanding the business better, then we do our utmost to try to help with this. In some cases, we go further than that. We actually engage in cases. I will show you the tool that I use for that in a moment. But then we actually engage and actively de-risk together with the company, of course, an initiative so that it, in the end, hopefully becomes a successful industry. Next slide, please. Before I go into talking about any success stories, I'd like to say something about what, first of all, a statement. The first idea that people usually have is that you have to have a bright idea, and that is the ticket to success. But it is so much more than having that bright idea or the technology or something like that. It is many different parameters that you have to control and to nurture in order to have a successful business. There on the screen now, I realize that the text is a little bit small, but there's a spider web diagram. And we use this spider web diagram to try to monitor how we actually are able to help companies. And if you can see the small print, you will see that there is a number of different parameters beyond the technology. Regulation, for example. You have to be sure that the regulation is on your side, that you're doing something that is actually supported by regulation. Permitting is in many cases very important. Skills, we're in a situation where the battery industry definitely needs more skills. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to people doing things, and you need the skills for them to do that. You need the customers, a demand pull, off-takers. Brilliant ideas can't fall flat unless there are someone who is actually prepared at that time to pay for it, and so on. So this, I hope this gives an idea that it's a lot more than technology. Usually the companies have a good idea about the technology, but there are other things that have to be in place to get successful. Next slide, please. Starting to come to the mentioning successful cases, I'd like to show this slide. This is a slide demonstrating ongoing and planned battery cell manufacturers in Europe. Now, here's a success story. If you go back 4 to 5 years, this map would have been empty, with some very small exceptions. Now I count to almost 50, more than 50 actually, different battery cell manufacturers. That they are by far not in operation, all of them, just a few are. But in just 5 years, we Europeans have managed to create at least this part of the value chain. So on this slide is a selection of those companies. Maybe we can go to the next slide, please. But are we finished yet? Is the battery industry now finished? No, by far not. This is a busy slide. At the top, you see the value chain. And I just talked about the cell manufacturing. That's the part in the section in the middle of this graph. And the blue columns should reach up to their respective demand level, so to say. That is the dotted lines on this graph. And you can see that when it comes to cell manufacturing, you see the 2025 and the 2030 column which demonstrates the planned capacity almost reaches up to the demand that we foresee. This is also true for the applications. There you have all the OEMs building cars or tools or whatever. But upstream, that's to the left in the picture, and downstream, after use, the recycling part is definitely not totally in place. Here, the capacity is the capacity that I know of, I should say, and I don't know everything, but the announced capacity is far below the demand that is foreseen here in Europe. So the columns should actually reach up to those dotted lines. Saying this in an optimistic way and a positive way, there is a gigantic potential for more business in these fields, but also in the fields where we're well represented. Next slide, please. So, success stories. Well, these that I show here, Northvolt, Ellistor, and Skeleton, are two that you have possibly heard of. These are the ones that have succeeded to get, well, they have succeeded in building factories and products. They're still in the development, definitely, but they have come a long way. Northvolt building the next generation of lithium-ion battery factory with a new concept focusing on scale, vertical integration, and high controlled manufacturing. They start production in less than a month, or in a month more or less. Very exciting. Ellistor, they have a different technical solution, storing electric energy in a so-called flow battery. They also have applications, or they have applications out there already. Skeleton, they are in a different, they have a different solution yet, and that is using ultra capacitors, and they are scaling up as well as we speak. So these are just 3 cases. If I would go into the number of small companies, these 20 minutes are definitely not enough for that. What you're seeing now is the tool that I use to, or we at Innoenergy and EBA250, that we use to help companies. So we have a scouting we go out scouting for companies. We get in contacts with these, we screen them, and at a certain point when we feel that there is interest from the companies for us to try to help, then we ask them to make an application. We run that by a committee consisting of many different capacities of knowledge. And if the fit is right, if we feel from InnoEnergy and EBA that we can contribute and the company is interested in our help, then we go through, we sign up with a contract. And after that, we actually put a resource at the disposal of this company to strengthen the company. We have today some 10 companies, most of them in the areas that I highlighted as being critical, that is upstream and recycling. You can see some of the names there in the end. And what we do is we focus on the parameters that I described in the web, the spider web diagram, and develop that so that these companies in the end are able to get the financing they need to become successful. This is the business investment platform that we use. Next slide, please. These companies have all gone through this or are in this funnel that I just described. As you will see, we at InnoEnergy, we focus on the parts that are still weaker, where Europe is not that well represented in the value chain. So if you analyze the ones on the page here, these are all upstream. Projects. Next slide, please. You can go on to bring out the whole there, and one more, please. So on a bigger perspective, Europe 5 years ago had, with some exceptions, I should say, very little on the battery in the battery industry. There is still, and now even more, a lot of research and innovation going on in Europe. But when it comes to the industrial part, there was precious little. Now, 5 years later, as I showed you, as you hopefully took away from my slides, some parts of the value chain are actually quite well represented. So the picture that I'm trying to show, we have definitely gone from an industrial point of view, almost being non-existent, to now there are very few people who doubt that Europe is going to have a lot to say when it comes to the battery industry. Now the attitude when I talk to companies is that, in fact, yes, we can definitely do this. Now let's just get it done. So we have moved from the game is lost, or we are not even there, we're not even interested, to we can become winners. And with that, hopefully I give you some insights into what is important. I mentioned a couple of success stories. There are many, many, many more. I need a day to go through just a small fraction. And with that, I would like to say thank you and hand back to Kathy.
Thank you very much indeed, Tore. Really interesting, good positive stories there, and very clear that it's not just a bright idea, it's not just technology, a lot more to it than that. Just to tell everybody, or to invite questions as we go into our panel now, because we really want to get a sense of what is happening in terms of European tools to support innovation uptake. So let me introduce our panelists. We're delighted to have with us Daria Hedberg, who is the Business Development and ESG Manager for Geyser Batteries, startup in Finland, a deep tech company. So we'll be hearing the story of Geyser Batteries' road to funding and to market. From the European Commission, Maria Velkova, who is the Policy Officer Finance for Innovation at the European Commission. So Maria is going to talk about the Innovation Fund and the opportunities that can offer to the battery supply chain. We have Francesco Mattiucci, who is the European from the European Innovation Council. Francesco is actually at the EIC summit in Brussels at the moment. So the European Innovation Council is an instrument to support high-risk technology, something it's really needed. And Tore, you're going to stay with us, I know, also on the panel. So great to see you. Let's start from the company perspective. Let's talk to Daria Hedberg from Geyser. Great to see you, Daria. Tell us a little bit about your company. I mean, I know that it's high power, heavy duty energy storage, and you've got this sort of water-based electrolyte. So it's a very, very specialist. It's real deep tech, years and years of research gone into it. Give us a sense of your journey to manage to actually get out of the lab to the market.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for the introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here. I have to say it's really exciting time to be in the energy storage sector in general. So as you rightly pointed out, Geyser Batteries is a Finnish startup, and we bring to market an absolutely new type of electrochemistry and batteries developed based on that. So the electrochemistry that we rely on is not originating from the let's put it so, like more commonly promoted chemistries like lithium-based technology or flow batteries or something similar. So we actually developed a solution which would be combining the benefits of a supercapacitor and the battery, making it a high power and long-lasting, sustainable and safe battery. And I see that we are fully aligned with the goals which are already proposed, for example, in the upcoming batteries regulation in terms of societal or environmental impact. And I think it's really important for us to continue developing it. And that's why we're being, of course, commercializing the technology and going on the road from lab to the market.
So how difficult was that then? Because, I mean, your research was going on for something like 25 years. I mean, this is very different sort of technology. We are talking deep tech here.
Yeah, exactly. So our R&D team has more than 30 years of experience in different types of energy storage. The technology that we are commercializing right now has a little bit of a shorter story, and it's based on the previously commercialized technology of aqueous supercapacitors. So we just added I'm not going to be going like into details of a technology itself, but when we established the company in 2018, we were already bringing a technology which was kind of ready for the product market fit with the potential customers. So this was the first part of our journey in the past 2.5 years.
Our investors often don't know a lot about tech, do they? They don't trust it. They're scared. They just don't know about it. So Absolutely. How do you get over that hurdle?
I think the most important thing is to get the support, to show to the investors the support from the potential customers, that actually it's the customer that can trust the technology, that they can field test the technology, or to go into a pilot. Like, for example, we are going with the soon with potentially in the piloting stage with the Shell when we won the New Year Energy Challenge. So I think these are kind of the milestones that the investors are looking for, and of course support from the public funding, from soft funding mechanism is also important to attract more private investors, and vice versa, of course.
So, but you're now associated with a big name, Shell, which is fantastic. Not everybody could hope for that. But who was prepared to take the first leap of faith in your company and say, we will back you?
In terms of the investments, it's of course, first of all, I think it's the Finnish government. That was a great support, because Geyser Batteries was established in Finland with the idea of an amazing ecosystem that's being built by the Finnish government. You probably already know that we have a national battery strategy in Finland with building the whole battery value chain, from raw materials to recycling. And being part of this kind of ecosystem and being supported by the government both financially and in general as kind of motivational support is really important.
But they have to have a certain risk appetite to be able to invest in a company like yours.
Absolutely, to provide this kind of soft funding, they have to have risk appetite, just like our private investors. For example, the Voima Ventures, Butterfly Ventures. These are our first investors in Finland.
Well, no doubt you would still be interested in EU funding, but
Absolutely.
let's now move to our two speakers from the EU, just to find out what's happening at EU level, and then who knows, by the end of the morning or the end of the afternoon, you might have a good contact there. So let's hear now from Maria Velkova, and to tell us about the Innovation Fund, because this is one of the world's largest funding programs for demonstrating innovative low carbon technologies. So Maria, tell us more about it.
Thank you, Kati. Yes, well, Innovation Fund, we have been really excited with this EU program because it is a unique program. And if I can get one of my first slides, the next one, please. Yes, which this slide actually shows where we can direct our funding. And just to say, with one sentence, the Innovation Fund is aiming to support projects in their last step before commercialization. So we aim to support large-scale demonstration projects or first-of-a-kind commercial projects, and this is something which in which the Innovation Fund is rather unique on the EU landscape. Definitely, we have thanks to the EU ETS, actually, we have quite big amount of money. We often are unable to say how much because, in fact, our funding depends on the carbon price. But luckily, actually, the carbon price has been increasing, and meaning that, well, an estimate, a rather conservative actually estimate is 25 billion euro we have to spend until 2030, and with we actually proposing a revision of the ETS directive, which, if passed the way we have proposed it at the Commission, may result in the Innovation Fund going up to 47 billion. So it's really a lot of money we have. We have a lot of sectors to serve, as you see on the slide, but we can support renewable energy, and everything has to be innovative. Like, of course, I don't need to repeat innovative every time. So renewable energy, both production and use, carbon capture, use and storage projects, energy intensive industries that are covered by the EU ETS, which is really quite wide, so almost any almost any industry. And we have a specific mention of energy storage. Moreover, we have provided, actually we have a separate sector which is for manufacturing plants for components for renewable energy and energy storage. But looking at this, actually our scope, I believe we can fund projects that reduce greenhouse gas emissions, because this is in fact the main objective in the battery value chain from the beginning to end almost. So I was looking at the previous slides, really from active materials to manufacturing to application and integration to repurposing to recycling, all possible solutions, innovative solutions we can fund. And just one last thing perhaps to mention is, in fact, we do not have a limit on the grants we can give, because the limit, well, there is a limit. The limit is actually the financial gap that a project has, and it's 60% of the limit, but there's no hard limit in terms of volume of euros we can give, and it is grants. And also important differentiation from other instruments at EU level is that we can support single entities. The only really limitation is that these projects have to be situated on the territory of the EU, including Iceland and Norway. So next slide. I have picked a few examples of successful projects. Well, successful in terms of that they are getting the grant or they're getting a support. And I know I have very little time, so I won't be able to go through those projects, but we are very happy to have already selected a number of projects which involve batteries, like a vehicle-to-grid project in Italy. This is DROS one, green foil project, which is actually quite a specific project, which is developing this foil for batteries, so something like a component for batteries. Then we have Northflex, both situated in Poland and Sweden, which is a lithium-ion battery energy storage system. We have B-Hyper Community Solar Energy, where there is actually a PV generation backed with a battery system, and finally Lissoud, France, which is aimed at producing ultra pure electrolyte salts. So just a snapshot, really, and we do have more projects, and we have the links actually to our website where you can actually find more information. And this is my last slide, where I just wanted to, summarize. We have had 2 calls for the moment, actually, of the Innovation Fund. We have seen a very good success rate of energy storage projects, especially in the small scale call. In the large scale call, we have for the moment only 2 projects which are getting project development assistance. What I want to say is that we will have annual calls. We will be publishing annual calls, and currently the next large-scale call for proposals is open, and it will close in March. So we're encouraging actually all possible innovative and mature projects to come and apply. And then we are planning a next call for small-scale proposals to be open in March next year. Sorry, it's 2022. I see now mistake on the slides. So that's from me in very brief terms.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. And the presentations will be available afterwards, so people can see the details. Well, thank you, Maria. And I mean, what's incredible is just hearing the sort of money that is available. So that's not really the issue anymore, is it? So Francesca Mattiucci from the European Innovation Council, you are talking about now an instrument to support high-risk technology, where other investors may have some doubts. So tell us a little bit about how it works. If you can keep it as brief as you can, because we need to leave a little bit of time for our discussions. And please do send any questions, anybody who is watching. Thank you.
Yeah, I tried to switch on my camera, Katie. I hope you can hear me. Just to sum up and try to, to answer if there are some doubts on it. I mean, European Innovation Council, it's an executive agency of European Commission within the 3rd pillar. We have got approximately 1.5 billion euros of yearly budget. We are the only executive agency that write our own work program. So there is an EIC yearly work program, and we work content-wise. That means we try to work with the things that the previous colleagues said. That means we try to create partnership. We try to help science and business-wise our funded, both projects and companies. If we can go to the next slides, please. You see that here EIC has come from the ambitious idea is to set up a council, an agency that is able to try to help with all the other funds of the European Commission, national and regional funds, to help overcoming the European paradox. So we are here to discuss that the innovation is complex. Innovation requires many tools, many helps, and one of these is the EIC. If we can go to the next slide, we see that there are 3 calls managed by EIC, Pathfinder, Transition and Accelerator. They the whole value chain of innovation. If we look at TRL, for example, we can say that Pathfinder at the end, they should develop a partnership, should develop a proof of concept, so at a lab scale. Then we go to the new call that are the transitions that bring the lab to the fab. That means bring the proof of concept to the prototype. And then there is a mono beneficiary only for small, medium enterprises accelerator. One of the characteristics is that EIC is funding what you named before, Kate, is the deep technologies. There are many definitions, but the concept can be easily said. This means a science-based, multidisciplinary, open approach driven, hardware problem-solving technologies. And last but not least, high risk. And so we need, and the companies need, and the research centers need, the public help in developing their know-how. One characteristic of EIC is that we have got 2 types of calls, both Pathfinder, Transition, Accelerator. There are the open calls, so no topic prescription, and the challenge-based calls. There are challenges to which all the partners, in the case of Pathfinder and Transition, and the mono-beneficiary in the case of accelerator has to answer to our specific challenge. If we can go to the next slide. One characteristic is that one of the people that I belong to is the office of the PM's program manager. We manage projects and we do three kinds of jobs, shortly saying. We identify the challenges through speaking with all the relevant scientists, entrepreneurs, managers, and VCs, and we propose the challenges to the board, to the program committee and inter-service inside the European Commission to put these challenges inside the yearly EIC work program. Then we group, as Thomas showed before, what we call the hands-on approach, because our ambition is not to be a grant-giving agency. That means not only monitoring the project, but working with the project hands-on. So we work, as Thomas showed before, we group the project thematically, and we help them both scientifically wise. Business-wise, it means that inside EIC at the different levels, there are the business acceleration services. If we can go to the next slide, we see that we have got different type of portfolios. In the case of Marco Antonio Pantaleo and me, we manage the green technologies. There are 4 actually PMs, 2 on health and 2 on green technologies. Next year, there will be 6 more program managers. We have, for example, a thematic portfolio on energy storage that ranges also from the batteries to the thermal storage. In the case of batteries, to say at the Pathfinder level, so at the low TRL, we are working with companies and projects and partnerships that are trying to overcome the use of critical raw materials, for example, working also with the computational materials approach, trying to develop and to discover new materials for the broad and different type of batteries, different type of energy storage devices that obviously are different from the different applications. So we try to group our research centers, for example, with stakeholders coming from corporates or coming from VCs. If we can go to the next slide. Just to say that EIC, I hope I tried in 3 minutes to explain that we can sum up saying that we are a group of almost 700 people trying to bring the European Commission support at a level of content, trying to help and to drive where necessary the researchers, but also the entrepreneurs in the direction of the market, trying in the end to be an intermediary of knowledge for the long innovation journey of deep tech projects and companies.
Thank you very much indeed, Francesco. So do you think that these initiatives are really going to change things now? They are game changers in the sense that we all know that Europe has been known as not being very good at crossing this valley of death. Do you think we are going to be able to do it now? I mean, the money's there anyway, isn't it? But it takes more than that.
Yeah, Katie, the answer is I would be a liar if I tell you that EIC or EIT will solve, or Innovation Fund will solve alone the European paradox. It's a long process that requires years. But if we start, as EIT colleagues are doing, from the training, there are all the issues. If you look at Katie at the Horizon Europe program, all the topics and a lot of money to help creating the culture of innovation in deep technologies. And here is where we should develop. Management is called the ambidexterity, the European Commission capability to help the short-term projects, so the companies, the realization of manufacturing plants, as we were saying in Northvolt. Just an example, Skeleton is funded by EIT, but has been funded by EIC Accelerator. And on the other way, there is also the possibility to help other kind of projects. And so we are part, Katie, of the ambition to overcome the paradox, but we need the training, the cultures, and also other private money. Just to end up, another characteristic really important of EIC, and that's the first venture capitalist fund of European Commission. It's called EIC Fund. And one of the ambitions of this fund, that is called a silent fund, is to help the companies giving acceleration services and helping them in crowding in, Katie, private investors, because it's crucial. We need the public to boost the acceleration, to boost the innovation, but then we need the private money. And here is where there is a lot of job to be done by all the guys in Europe, and we are part of this.
And so, Dario, when you hear it, this ambition, and you see the sort of money that's out there, what does that sound like from your perspective, from a startup's perspective? Is this going down the right road?
Well, I think that, of course, the fact that we have these tools now available in Europe is really good for support of different types of companies. But we know that yet startups are a little bit less, well, maybe not even a little bit, financed in Europe than, for example, in the United States. So there is, of course, still this gap between, bringing innovation in the United States or in Europe and how much funding they will be receiving. And I have to say that, of course, hearing all these stories about all the presentations of Francesco and Maria is amazing to see, like, how much support the European Union is planning to put on the innovative technologies. And I'll give you our example. We are yet not so successful in getting the support from the European Union. We applied 6 times to EIC and once to Innovation Fund. So we are yet to probably, hopefully, experience these great support tools.
Well, no, that's interesting. I mean, Maria, do you know, have you got any idea of what percentage of projects are accepted and actually do get the support that you're talking about?
Yes, yes, I do have quite a good idea actually. We have to consider that the Innovation Fund is a new program and it hasn't been there for energy storage or batteries. There wasn't such a program actually of this type, and also for energy intensive industries. So we saw huge interest in it. In the first 2 calls, like, we had around 300 proposals, and in the small scale call, we were able to award grants to 32 projects out of 300, so around 10% success rate. In the large scale call, the success rate is much lower, 7 large flagship projects which will have an impact. But there will be annual calls, and we do encourage actually all applicants to read carefully the evaluation summary reports they are getting and to work on the weaknesses, where there were some weaknesses identified, to get support from energy, for example. But we have the European Investment Bank. Actually, we at the moment have now a financial advisory which is open. I didn't mention it because of time, but do contact me if you need information. It is there to support, for example, financial maturity. So please come again when you're ready, when you're mature enough, because I believe we have a lot of money to support all good projects.
Okay, and thank you. Well, that's good news for Daria, perhaps. Tori, tell me from your perspective, and how you can help companies to really prepare themselves and to make the right connections and to provide the right information and to go, just how can you help more?
What we usually do is if you remember the spider web diagram and the parameters on it, what we start with to get a feeling for what can we do, what is missing here for this company or this project to become credible in the face of investors or whoever it might be. Well, usually it's all about getting funding to do what you want to do, so in front of the investors, and then we go parameter by parameter and dive into, well, how is it? Do you have the board members you need for the good connections? Do you have the right? Are you in contact with the potential customers? Do they understand that you exist? Do they understand your technology? Can we help in conveying contacts? So we go point by point, trying to establish each weakness. We look for weaknesses actually, because that is where we can contribute. The strong parts we don't want to touch.
And where are the weaknesses tending to be then? Because it's not the technology usually, is it?
Correct. It's usually not the technology. Well, there are some, but those weed out. Those fall off naturally. But where the technology is good, then if it's high tech, it's usually about conveying the idea or the benefit of what you're trying to do to. And here comes the key thing: the strongest of all these parameters is the customers. So if you can, especially the more complicated or the more technically, complicated is a negative word, but the more intricate your solution is, the more important it is to be able to say, look, those guys over there, they're prepared to pay for it. The investors, they are very good at many things, but maybe they are not specialists and at understanding the technological depth of your solution. So what do? Well, they usually look at, well, is there someone who's interested in this? And the strongest document that you can show in that case is an offtake agreement, a credible offtake agreement, not just a letter of intent and so on and so forth. If you can't have a offtake agreement, at least some kind of agreement showing that someone wants to test your solution in their solution or in their context, so to say. That is usually where we end up. How do we get that? And then you go back to all the other parameters. Do we have the skills? Do we have the suppliers? Do we have is there regulation? Are we following regulation? Is permitting in place? Then you end up going to all those good things as well.
So I mean, I can see the route that you're going down. I mean, but from your perspective, would you say that at EU level, this is they're getting it right, and that it is an exciting time in terms of support for the battery world?
I would definitely say that we're in a historic moment. Actually, the change that we are going through in the battery industry is, well, people usually don't believe me, but I compare it to when we got the to the mobile phone or when we got the computer. But now here we're talking about count in kilos or in whatever. It's so much bigger. We're going to change the whole transport sector. We're going to change the whole energy sector. And this in a shorter time than what it took to implement computers on everybody's desks.
So I mean, of course, running out of time. I just want to ask you all in 30 seconds to tell me the most important thing that we've got to get right to speed up the road from lab to market. It may be something you've already said, but what really is the most important thing? So Francesca, what would you say is the thing that we've got to get right to speed up the road from lab to market?
I think that the first issue is to know the market needs, or to be so strong to be able to create the niche market. So the first thing is for sure the knowledge of the market, but when we speak about deep tech, also the knowledge of the science behind. And the second one, for sure, team. As I was saying before, it's not easy to have this ambidexterity, able to see in the short and in the long term. When I mean team, to end up the 30 seconds, I mean also involving the stakeholders. We need the researchers to speak to the companies, and EIC, we are so ambitious, we hope to be able to be intermediaries in this discussion, because never forget that a researcher, if not is driven by innovation, but is driven by science, he speaks a different language from an innovation manager in a company or from a venture capitalist. We are here, 700 people, European Commission, to help drive entrepreneurs and researchers to speak together. And for sure, there is no safety when you do R&D and I. But for sure, we are here as all the European Commission to try to facilitate the difficult, ambitious innovation journey. And we don't want to be followers. We have to be drivers.
Absolutely. And that speaking the same language is so important. Maria, what would you say in less than 30 seconds?
Well, I would say that what we have seen in the proposals that came to us was that there was like no issue in most of them in terms of degree of innovation. Excellent projects in terms of innovation and impact. The problem applicants had with us was maturity. Technical and financial maturity. So I would advise any applicant to look for assistance and apply when ready, not to be disappointed. And please apply again.
Okay, thank you. Tore?
I agree with Francesco. The right team is fundamental. You have to have that. You have to have an idea, the right team, and then that whatever it is that we are talking about has to be connected to a value chain of some kind. And especially if there's one special part in the value chain, there has to be someone who is interested in your solution. That might sound very basic, but it is frequently so that the harder you are connected to someone who is prepared to pay for it, the better things work.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes the answers are not rocket science, but they are good basic things. Right. Last word has to go to Daria, because you're the important bit in this. You're the one that's going to make the difference.
Well, we would of course love to see. Well, we already see, but I think in general collaboration between different entities, including the funding organizations and customers and the other types of stakeholders. This is really important, especially when we talk about bringing totally new technologies. And as a small company, as a startup, it's extremely important to see that the support is there, and to see the fact that stakeholders are really ready to be brave enough to invest in something new and to support something new.
Okay, so bravery that we need. Well, thank you all very much indeed. It was a bit of a run through in terms of some ideas, but I think you got across a lot of information and a lot of encouragement, I think, to people who are looking to make this journey and make this leap across the valley of death. So the best of luck to everybody. So thank you. We are now delighted that we're going to be joined at the end of this 2.5 days of Battery Innovation Days by Jean-Eric Paquet, Director General, DG Research and Innovation. Delighted to have you with us, and I think you would like to talk to us to bring these 2.5 days to a close.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, first of all, congratulations for these Battery Innovation Days. I think there were a remarkable moment where the very many different actors which are bringing Europe into the future on battery research, but more, as importantly, battery deployment, came together. And as I think this very last session illustrated splendidly, this is really about connecting actors, connecting instruments to ensure that we can all deploy our solutions in a very impactful manner. And I think these Battery Innovation Days, they need to be repeated. And I'm sure they will be repeated on a regular basis because it is indeed a space where Europe, I think, will be able to lead on the deployment of these solutions. What I think I can add to the work and the exchanges of the last 3 days is probably 2 or 3 elements. The first one is that I think the political momentum behind deployment is stronger than ever. What I think I want to retain from COP26 is that for the first time, the discussions have been not just about the longer-term carbon neutrality objective, where Europe is now not alone anymore. There are major players which have, after Europe declared 2050 as the time horizon for carbon neutrality, but the discussions in Glasgow were very much about how much can we already reduce our emissions by 2030, because the accumulation of emissions is what is driving, of course, global warming, and the IPCC report is from that point of view particularly telling that progress needs to be amplified, accelerated, is urgent by 2030. This is where the Green Deal and the work which is happening across alliances, partnerships, and in very many different innovation instruments is so important. We are in a moment where, yes, the well-known Valley of Death remains certainly a challenging place to go through when you are a company or an innovator. But I would argue that never before has Europe been clear that we need to connect our science, our engineering capacity, our deep tech competence with deployment instruments. And I think the exchanges in the panel just now illustrate that, yes, the Valley of Death is there, but I think illustrates also that industrial players, innovators, and public instruments are really, for the first time, really coming together and to an extent technology roadmaps, which are very much discussed in the key areas of our green transformation, batteries as well. I think these roadmaps are really the compass, the very practical compass to allow innovators, industry players, but also to an extent society to navigate through that valley of death and accelerate the urgently needed deployment at scale of these solutions. So that's my first point. I think we need to look at it in a very ambitious way. The momentum is there, and the innovation narrative, therefore, is today very different. And I heard it in this last session, as I'm hearing it in many different parts of this broader green transformation, innovation-fueled green transformation of Europe. We are here really pioneering. My second point is to say that this European leadership, which will be, I also expect, our industrial competitiveness, but our leadership, I think, needs to be driving more ambition across the globe. And I think the interesting tension is between our leadership in building these powerful batteries ecosystems, which I would argue will allow us to lead us on battery technology as we move forward. I think we also need to promote these approaches across the globe, again, to ensure that as humanity, we have impact in the shorter term to reduce our emissions and make the Paris perspective of 1.5 degrees, in any case, much below 2 degrees, a reality. I think, again, here the IPCC report is extraordinarily clear that there is no choice than to do that if we want to avoid disruptions and massive consequences on humanity. The third point I wanted to make is on links and synergies. I think the batteries industry or the batteries ecosystem is one where systemic thinking remains absolutely critical. This is about industrial deployment, this is about emissions, but this is also about sustainability and environmental impact, and very much in terms of solution in deploying a circular economy. So as actors of that ecosystem, you need to continue to think across these areas, and we as policymakers need to ensure that this effectively takes place. And these battery innovation days are, again, beyond the deployment dimension and the project pipelines which will emerge, I have no doubt, also an important place where this systemic dimension needs to be thought through and approaches and solutions deployed out of these discussions, a key dimension of Europe's batteries policy and vision. And lastly, and here I'm not entirely completely clear on how much this was discussed throughout the 3 days, but I'm sure it has appeared quite a bit. And in the last panel, of course, the central role of the uptake by the consumer was identified, obviously. I think is the notion that we need also to anchor our thinking and actions into ownership in society. This is, I think, again, a cross-cutting challenge of our green transformation. It also applies to the energy transformation and to the batteries as solutions. We need to, as actors, ensure that we also engage with Europeans, with citizens, with consumers, so that our societies have greater ownership as we move forward of these solutions. And here, I think the need to look into social innovation as one of the instruments under Horizon Europe to promote the rollout of battery-based energy solutions is, I think, also particularly important. And I hope that out of these 3 days, this is also one area of future work on which the various actors will continue to focus on. So again, I'm really impressed. Grateful of the initiative taken by the Batteries for EU, the Battery Alliance, the European projects, the projects of European importance, that you all decided to come together as key players, because you will allow Europe to fully use batteries, and you will also allow us to lead as industries. But I also hope as thought leaders, pioneers, to ensure that this green energy transition is picked up on a global scale, allowing us to make headway towards 2030 and 2050. Well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed to Jean-Eric Paquin. Yes, it's clear that the political momentum is there, and these are exciting times in terms of batteries. And this will not, definitely, I think, not be the last of the Battery Innovation Days events. So that's wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Just before you all disappear, let me just tell you that the presentations from all the sessions and recordings are already available on the website. You just click on Agenda and you then go to the past sessions. All the recordings will also be available in the coming days on the official events YouTube channel. There'll be a survey sent out to you. We've had something like 1,500 people watching over the last 3 days. So we've had so much interest that there will be a survey sent to you on Monday. If you could take the time to fill it out, it'd be great, because it will help to create an even better event next time. So we find out what you think about it this time. And you can also, if you have any thoughts, you can just, I think it's there, the info@batteryinnovationdays.eu. You can already send emails if you want to. You can follow on Twitter and LinkedIn, and then there will certainly be news of when the next Battery Innovation Days will take place. Just a few thank yous. Thank you, first of all, to everybody the audience, and thank you for all your questions. 1,500 people within Europe and beyond, because we did see people joining us from India, from Morocco. Those are the countries I noticed, but I'm sure it was even beyond that. Thank you to the European Commission for the support provided by Battery 2030 Plus, Batteries Europe, BEPA and IPSE, to Professor Christina Edstrom, Kasia Saikali and Camilla Dan from Battery 2030 Plus, Edel Sheridan, Alexandra Romano from Batteries Europe, Capucine Van Orenberger, Wouter Ausemans and Philippe Jacques from BEPA, Marco Everts, Uwe Seidel, Emily Mercier, Kirsten Zebe, Mathieu Hubert, Sylvia Del Bono, Fabrice Sassin from the IPSE, to Gemma Garcia. Special thanks to all the technical team behind the scenes. That's to Timotei, Valentina, especially to Elisabetta Brisaldi, who we've all had so much contact with in the run-up to this, and she'll be going to lie down in a darkened room, I think, after this. It's been such a busy time. Just to tell you, don't forget that there is an IPSE side event this afternoon, and also the General Assembly of Batteries Europe. So that is it. Those are all my thank yous. Those are all the things I've got to say. So for me, goodbye, and have a very good rest of the day. Goodbye.